Rhetoric is often defined as the art of persuasive speaking or writing, but can also be viewed as the science of fallacious logic and sophistry. Fallacious logic refers to faulty reasoning and arguments that are designed to deceive or manipulate an audience, while sophistry is the use of clever but false arguments to persuade or manipulate others. While sound logic is science of correct reasoning, rhetoric, on the other hand, is the art of using fallacious and deceitful logic methodically. Here I will argue that rhetoric is indeed the science of fallacious logic and sophistry by examining the ways in which rhetoric can be used to manipulate and deceive. Rhetoric often relies on appealing to emotions rather than logic. Rhetoric seeks to persuade by playing on the emotions of the audience, often using techniques such as fear mongering or emotional manipulation to sway opinion. This can lead to fallacious reasoning, as arguments based solely on emotion are not always sound or rational. For example, a politician or scientist or an economist may use fear-mongering tactics to convince people to support a certain policy, even if the arguments are based on faulty logic and misinformation. Another common tactic of rhetoric is the use of loaded language and persuasive techniques to sway an audience. This can include using buzzwords, slogans, and propaganda techniques to manipulate the way people think about a particular issue. By controlling the language and framing of a debate, a rhetorician can steer the conversation in a certain direction and distract from the underlying fallacies in their arguments. Also relies heavily on the logical fallacy of personal attacks, which involve attacking the character of or motives of a person making an argument rather than addressing the actual argument itself. By discrediting the person making the argument, a rhetorician can avoid engaging with the substance of their claims and instead focus on attacking their credibility or character. Rhetoric often involves the use of scarecrow arguments, which involves misrepresenting or exaggerating an opponent's position in order to make it easier to attack. By creating a false version of their opponent's arguments, a rhetorician can easily knock down the straw man and avoid engaging with the real substance of their opponent's position. Rhetoric often relies on appeal to authority, which involves invoking the opinions of experts or influential figures to lend credibility to an argument. While appeals to authority can be legitimate in some cases, they can also be used to manipulate and deceive an audience by relying on the status or reputation of a person rather than the strength of their arguments. Rhetoric often involves the use of circular reasoning, which is a logical fallacy that involves assuming the conclusion in the premises of an argument. By circular reasoning, a rhetorician can create the illusion of a coherent argument without actually providing evidence or logical support for their claims. Rhetoric often involves the use of slippery slope arguments, which involve making a series of unsupported or exaggerated claims about the possible consequences of a particular action or policy. By painting a dire picture of the future based on a slippery slope arguments, a rhetorician can manipulate and deceive their audience into supporting their position without providing any real evidence or logical support. Rhetoric is often associated with history, which is the use of clever or deceptive arguments to deceive or manipulate others. Sophists were known for their ability to use language in a clever way that could make false arguments mean convincing. This manipulation of language and logic is a core component of rhetoric, as it seeks to persuade through the use of persuasive techniques rather than sound reasoning. Rhetoric can be used to distort the truth and mislead the audience. By using persuasive language and emotional appeals, rhetoric can make false claims seem more plausible than they actually are. This can lead to manipulation and deception, and those using rhetoric may prioritize winning over truthfulness. Rhetoric can be used to manipulate the beliefs and opinions of others without their full awareness, by appealing to emotions and playing on biases. Those using rhetoric can sway opinion in their favor without presenting a balanced or honest portrayal of the issue at hand. This can lead to a lack of critical thinking and reliance on manipulation rather than rational discourse. Rhetoric can create a divisive and polarized atmosphere where reasoned debate is replaced by emotional appeals and personal attacks. By using rhetoric to stir up emotions and create conflict, those using this technique can prevent meaningful dialogue and drawn out opposing opponent viewpoints. This can lead to a deterioration of the civil discourse and a breakdown in communication between individuals with differing beliefs. It is important to recognize that rhetoric can be a powerful tool for manipulating and deceiving people, and that it is often relies on fallacious logic and sophistry to achieve its persuasive ends. By understanding the ways in which rhetoric can be used to deceive and manipulate, we can become more critical consumers of persuasive language and better able to identify and resist the tactics of fallacious argumentation. Ultimately, by recognizing the signs of fallacious logic and sophistry at work in rhetoric, we can better protect ourselves from being swayed by deceptive or manipulative arguments. Is all rhetoric sophistry? Or sophistry and fallacious arguments are employed by writers and speakers?